What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and this isn't really a theory video so much as just kind of like a curiosity video, because I'm curious to see whether or not we're gonna get the Skyfathers in Thor: Love and Thunder. Because we know that, like, or at least the rumors are saying anyway, and as far as I'm aware, I think it's been confirmed that Russell Crowe is playing Zeus in that movie, which makes sense. Russell Crowe's the perfect guy to play the role of Zeus. I mean, he just looks the part. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not gonna swear by it. But supposedly Zeus is going to appear in the movie. And that kind of got me thinking, right? The idea of the Skyfathers, because what's going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, especially with like looking at Moon Knight, is they're doing a lot of exploration of like the godly pantheons. And there's a lot of cool stuff to be had there. But before we get into that, we do need to thank our sponsor for this video, Atlas VPN. So for those of you guys who do not know, right now at this moment, and this is an absolutely insane deal, Atlas VPN is running this massive discount, right? It means you can get like a 3-year subscription for just $1.99 a month, for $2 a month. And they've got like a 30-day money-back guarantee. It's insane. You don't need to know much about VPNs to know that's an insane deal. So for those of you guys who don't know what a VPN is, this means virtual private network. And what it means is that when you have Atlas VPN activated on your devices, your laptop or your desktop or your phone, your internet traffic is funneled through essentially an encrypted tunnel, meaning no one can really see what you're actually doing. So it can protect you from like spying, public Wi-Fi issues, and it hides your IP address and your online activities. Now, one of the huge benefits of having a VPN is the issue of geo restriction. For those of you guys who don't know what that means, sometimes streaming services will have programming set up which is only available in certain regions. So if you're in the United States, you may not be able to see programming that's actually available on Netflix in Canada. But with Atlas VPN, you can actually bypass all of that, which basically means that you can see content on streaming services that is not readily available to you. So again, right now, at this moment, Atlas VPN is running this massive discount, right? It means you can get like a 3-year subscription for $2 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So time's running out. Make sure you get your deal by clicking the link in the video description below. And with that being said, let's get back into our video. So my first question here that I'm really kind of asking is, do you guys think we'll see the Skyfathers? Now, for those of you guys who don't know who that is, on Earth, you have what's called the Council of Godheads or the Council Elite or the Skyfathers. They go by different names, depending on who's referencing them, who's writing the comic, and even who's talking about them in the comic itself. But in essence, on Earth, you have all kinds of civilizations, right, that range from those that have been around for thousands and thousands of years to those that have only been around for, you know, a few hundred years and formed their own belief systems, right? The Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. So the thing about this, I like just randomly shouting things that I know. I feel like I'm going to start developing Tourette's, like I'm just going to give myself Tourette syndrome, but nonetheless, right? Each one of these cultures that exists out there, they have a god they worship. Now, in Marvel Comics, the origins of those gods sometimes mirror the origins of those gods in the real world. Other times, those gods simply don't exist. So like the Bashango people of Central Africa, for example, believed in the great god Bamba, who was basically the source of all creation with regards to the sun and the moon and the stars and earth, and there was a lot of vomiting and so on, but he doesn't exist as part of the Skyfathers. Instead, sometimes Marvel will take those different gods that exist as part of the Skyfathers that exist here in the real world, and they'll actually change their origin and make them more superhero-y, right, to fit the kind of fictional comic book narrative that we've largely come to expect. But in essence, despite all these different gods that exist, as most of you guys know, when it comes to these different cultures, you have like the head gods, right, the chief gods. So with the Greek mythos, for example, it is Zeus and Hera. In the Asgardian mythos, it is Odin and Freya. And so that's usually how that works. Now, the Council of Godheads is only ever really guys. And so you have like the Hindu god Vishnu, different things like that. They don't really come together all the time. And in fact, they don't really do much. There's only been a couple of times when they were relevant. Well, there's 2 important times and 1 kind of important time, depending on how you look at it. So the first time when they were incredibly relevant was when humanity had basically started worshiping them as gods due to these individual cultures culture's own understanding of these beings, right? However it is that they happen to come into existence, or however it is these cultures became aware of their existence. But because of the fact that the belief in these gods and the power of these gods would basically, or could potentially disrupt the evolution of humanity, when the Celestials came back for the second and third hosts, really the third host more than anything else, they instructed the Council of Godheads not to intervene, not to be involved in the affairs of mortal men, which is why in the history of humanity and Marvel Comics, you see stories where like Thor and Odin and these guys are routinely involved in the affairs of humanity, then suddenly it stops. It's because basically the Celestials told them to stop, otherwise they would be destroyed. The second time when they were incredibly relevant was really during the events of the Chaos War, when Amatsu Mikabashi was just racing through and killing every god he could come across, and even some of the cosmic entities, and doing it on a multiversal level. It was kind of nuts. And then the time when they were kind of important, but not really, was during Infinity Gauntlet, when Thanos had the gauntlet itself and everything. He was going to blink out half the life of the universe. The Council of Godheads were going to intervene, but Thanos actually separated them from basically all creation, from the universe itself. And so there was, having them cut off, there was no real way for them to gain access to really stop Thanos. And even if they could have, there wouldn't have been anything they could have done. But nonetheless, they've had different roles. Now, here's the reason why I say this is a cool concept, is because you have like the Ennead, for example, in Moon Knight, right? So like Amun-Ra and those guys, they're part of the Council of Godheads. Really Amun-Ra is, but like part of the Council of Godheads. It's not always simply the leaders. Occasionally somebody like Horus or Osiris will step in and end up being the leader, or at least have a voice on the Council of Godheads in the event that like Amun-Ra can't do it. But regardless of the situation, there's a lot of expansion going on with the godly elements of the Marvel Universe. Now, the reason why I say Thor Love and Thunder is the best time to introduce the Council of Godheads is because of the nature of Gorr, right? That Gorr, I don't know exactly what form he's going to take in the movie. We won't really know until the movie comes out. If he's just a guy who hates gods or whatever it is, he's almost an identical version of his comic book counterpart, or if he's something else. But in the comics, he hated gods because his people suffered all the time. They lived in a really harsh environment. He didn't believe that gods existed until he basically cursed the idea of gods. He essentially came out and told his tribe that was highly religious that he didn't believe in the idea of gods, and they essentially kicked him out. This, of course, was after like his wife and his children died of just the harsh environment they were in and all that kind of stuff. And then when he discovered gods were real, he came to the realization gods don't care. And so that's when he was like, then we'll just get rid of gods. And so ultimately he went on this crusade across the universe after stealing the all-black Necro sword of Null and started killing gods everywhere that he could find them. That's when you got a huge expansion of things. Because up to that point, the only gods that we were aware of that existed outside of Earth were like Klibbin and Slugurt, so basically the gods of the Skrull Empire. I know Slugurt sounds like a drink, it's the sound you make when you're drinking a slushie. I know, it's weird, Slugurt, but nonetheless, we knew they existed, right? It was basically a merging of the Eternal Skrulls and the Deviant Skrulls in order to perform or create a kind of unified society. There was Shara and Kithri, who were the gods of the Shi'ar Empire. There might be a few others up to that point, but not a ton. I mean, the Supreme Intelligence was about as close as you got to a god among the Kree race, because it was basically all the greatest minds that ever existed in the Kree Empire combined into the Supreme Intelligence. So he was basically the religious and political leader. But then you got into like this expansion with Thor God of Thunder by Jason Aaron, where it was like there were gods of bombs and there were gods of like peace and harmony, like basically gods on all these different worlds across the universe. And Gorr was killing them all. right? Like even like the Library of Worlds, right? Where you had like all these gods that would convene and meet and things along those lines. So it was a huge expansion of stuff. And so if Gorr is anything like his comic book counterpart, of course, we're likely going to see that element. The only real question is how far reaching does it go? And so I don't know if there would be like a scene in the movie when Thor is like when he's learning all these gods are being killed or something like that. And then he basically goes to like the Greek city of Olympia and finds that like Zeus has basically been attacked, or Zeus is in the middle of attacking or fighting Gorr, and then like Zeus dies, or like Hercules is there or something along those lines. Or they've basically been killed and like he's talking to Russell Crowe's Zeus and it's like his last dying few breaths, you know, Gorr the God Butcher was the one that did this to us. I don't really see them bringing in Russell Crowe to play Zeus to speak like 5 lines and then die, right? To have like a 3-minute cameo. I don't really see that happening, but I guess this is entirely possible. But I don't know if that's going to be the case, right? Or maybe like Thor teams up with the Greek gods or what have you. Again, we won't necessarily know until the movie comes out. But I'm curious what your all's thoughts are on this. I'm curious to see if this is something that you all think may actually be going on here. But regardless, with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.